I'm sitting here with Corey Powers, writer and director of Locksmith. He and I have known each other for a very long time, but Corey, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
I am a Chicago filmmaker, born and raised. Blake and I met back in the halls of Columbia College, Chicago, in film school. Since then, I've been primarily a DP or a camera operator. Um, and yes, a couple of years ago, I decided to do something different and try my hand in writing and directing some of my own shorts. And so that resulted in my first film, Nightcap, that Blake also helped produce as well. Uh, had a nice festival run with that in 2023. And also at the end of 2022, we also shot my new film Locksmith that is making the festival, beginning its festival run now. That Blake also produced that one. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. The film is set to premiere this Saturday at Dances with Films in LA as part of the Midnight series of short films.
Cool. So, how did you come about making Locksmith? Where'd the idea come from? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, so the way that I've approached making short films with being an independent filmmaker is trying to be realistic about what can I actually make and finish. Because I can have ideas, but if it's not feasible for me to produce at an ultra low budget, then it's something in my mind I'm never going. It's just going to end up being words on a page in a script, which that's fine. But if I'm going to come up with an idea, I want it to be a movie that I can make. So, in a similar way that I approached Nightcap was I had an idea for a portion of the film and thought, okay, this could just take place in an apartment for the entirety of the film. So, who do I know that would maybe let me film in their apartment? And Locksmith was approached a similar way. It was actually the catalyst for the idea actually initially came from I was hanging out with a friend of mine, and he was lamenting some sort of repair that he needed done in his apartment that he had kept asking his landlord about doing, and it made me think of how, like, yeah, you're always asking, and they show up way after the fact that you want the work done, and it always happens at the most inopportune time. So that kind of got the ball rolling for me. And thinking about that is making a setting of like, okay, this is a movie an idea that could take place in another apartment setting. And what's one of the most inconvenient times that a worker could show up at your apartment? And I thought, well, when you're literally you're in the shower and it interrupts your routine, but you've been waiting on this person to show up. So you're like, all right, fine, just come in and do the work already. And then it kind of snowballed from there, and thinking like, you know, how many people just let a complete stranger into their apartment, and how vulnerable you can be when you do that. So that's kind of where the idea initially came from. And like with any of my ideas is like, I was toying around with some of the ideas with it, but I'm like, wait, before you get too far ahead of yourself, do you have a location you could do this at? So I contacted a friend of mine, Ian McAvoy, who was he's also a Steadicam operator. And because I had an opening idea for the movie being this one long, continuous, unbroken take, and so I was pitching the idea to him, and also having been to his place, I knew that it would be conducive to how the idea would work. And he got on board with the idea, and we started spitballing it from there, and that ended up helping me flesh out the movie. And then I was able to actually sit down and write the complete script, knowing that it could take place in his apartment. And that's really like how I like to approach things, that it's like, once I know I have a location and I know my parameters, is how creative can I be within those parameters, and then tell the best story in that circumstance.
Yeah, I think any filmmaker starting out and any entrepreneur starting out, one of the best things you can do is use what you have. And when you were able to lean on your network like that, you did use what you have and you still wrote an engaging story, like you said, within those parameters. A story so engaging that it's now making some film festival runs.
Yeah, which that makes me really happy to see because, like, as you know, Blake, is we've worked together on a lot of things over the years, and uh, being new to relatively new to directing is I'm relatively new to directing myself, but I'm not new to working with directors and working with other producers on other people's projects. And one of the things I wanted to do with my own work is learn the lessons that I have from working with other people, both, good and quote unquote bad, that like, hey, these are the things I would do if I was in charge. And these are the things I would do differently if I were in their shoes. And one of the biggest things is like, hey, I give a lot of credit to anyone that actually finishes their movie because it is not easy to do. It's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time, even in the short film realm. And like you're talking about with the upcoming festival premiere and then some hopefully having a good run on the festival circuit is that was my other takeaway is like the amount of projects that I've worked on where either they weren't finished, they were never completed, or they were eventually completed, but then it was never put out for anyone to see. It wasn't submitted anywhere. It was never given the opportunity to see if it could find an audience. And you never know. You never know who might like it, for better or worse. It's just like, even if I always felt like, I'm like, even if it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, see how it plays. Someone might find something they appreciate, or maybe they don't like it and they trash it. And it's like, but hey, they sat and watched your movie and you can learn something from it.
So it sounds like you are not afraid to get a little bit beat up by your film being out there in the world, by your work being out in the world. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, no matter who you are, like when someone tells you they don't like something that you made, it doesn't feel good. I mean, you like people to watch your work and give you praise and just have everyone uniformly enjoy it, but that's not how the world works. Is like you're never going to please everybody, which that's fine in its own right. It's like it takes a little bit of like I feel like because I don't know yet with like Locksmith how it will be received by an audience, but with my previous film Nightcap, yeah, initially some of the feedback that I got from some people that was negative is just like, yeah, that doesn't feel good, like it's like, oh man, it's like even though you know to expect that there's going to be criticism and people aren't going to like it, is it doesn't make it feel any better when it happens, but it is like, well, for me it's just like, can you articulate why, like why doesn't it work, what don't you like about it, what are the problem areas? Because for me at least that's still beneficial to be like, oh hey, like I see your point, like that there's this could have been better, or maybe this story beat is unclear, or it needs whatever else detail for why it didn't work, or hey, maybe just this kind of story is something that you don't like, and it's like, okay, well then that also helps me figure out how to gauge the feedback that I'm getting, because I'm looking at this all with like making these films as one big learning process, just to because I'm not going to stop making movies, so it's like, why not learn how to improve with each successive one so that hey, it's going to be even better the next time.
So it sounds like you kind of have the mindset of you either win or you learn.
Yeah, a bit of that because, well, I mean, movies aren't a competition, so but it's like I don't know. I'd rather somebody, even if because like what I was having this discussion like the other day is that when you make something as I got that's in like the horror genre, anything that has any sort of suspense or scares in it or what have you, is you have to expect that maybe in parts where you wanted the audience to jump or be scared, is there's a good chance that they're going to laugh there as well. Some people are going to react and just laugh for whatever reason. Either they legitimately think it's funny, or they're just laughing because they're uncomfortable, or whatever it is. It's just like, I feel like it's a fine line you walk where like when you're trying to scare someone, you might make them laugh, or also like there might be points of comedy in it that you didn't realize before. And I'm fine with that because to me, that tells me that you're at least like paying attention and invested in the movie, even if you're like laughing at parts and finding things funny that wasn't intentionally funny, it's better than it being viewed with like apathy and boredom. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's like even if someone thinks it's bad and they laugh at it, but I can tell they're paying attention and engaged through it, then that means that something somewhere is resonating with that audience member, even if it's not exactly what you intended. Which, hey, you know, like I like finding out like, oh, this scene plays differently than how I had it in my head, and then being able to mull that over of like, oh, why? I wonder why it had that kind of reaction versus what my intention was, and because I can try and learn from that of being like, oh, I thought it would have this effect, but it consistently had this other effect emotionally on people. So
Sure. Now, you said for many years you've been a camera operator and a DP, and it was sort of recent that you moved over into the directing and writing side of things. After being in the business for so long, being in the creative field for so long, uh, from what you've learned, what are some of the most important things you can tell people who are looking to start making their own movies?
all the way through, even if you finish a movie and you know when an idea, as you know, Blake, is someone who writes and makes his own movies, is when something starts as an idea in your head and then it comes all the way through to being something on the screen, and if you put the work in and complete it, is like chances are that whatever was initially in your head is going to end up looking different in the final product. And we're our own worst critic in the fact that you can look at stuff and just be like, oh, this is not how I imagined it. This is way different. And when you're your own worst critic, oftentimes you're like, you can't help but feel like, oh, this sucks. But it's also the fact of like, you sat there with it. It's been in your, it started as an idea in your head, then it went to the page, and then it went to the screen, and it was edited and re-edited, and you've watched it over a million times, and just in your brain, it's like falling apart to a point where you kind of get sick of your own work after a while. That
Sure.
I think that there is the temptation that, which I think a lot of people do, and I've had experience, like I alluded to before, with other filmmakers, where I think they get to the finish line of finishing their movie and they're just like, this sucks. I can't let anyone see this. So like what I would say is that, like, for better or worse, is like, if you want to make a movie, finish it and put it out there and see what happens. Like, you might be pleasantly surprised, and what you might think is not up to snuff with what you set out to do. You don't know someone coming in cold to watching it and just, you know, appreciating that movie for what it is without knowing. They're not inside your head. They don't know what it initially looked like in your head. They just know what's on the screen. And maybe they really like it and it's a lot better than the way you perceived it yourself, or maybe it isn't great. But like, vast majority of movies out there aren't like cinematic classics. They just aren't. What matters is like, you get better as a filmmaker by doing it, finishing it, putting it out there, learning, and then making your next one. It's like, yeah, that's like for Keith stuff that I said before, but if you were going to make a movie, don't give up on it. Like, just make it and put it out there, especially if you're somebody that's starting out and you want you want to make a movie and you want to do it beyond just with yourself and a camera. Like, unless you're sitting there and you're the star, you're the cameraman, and you're not having anyone else help you, is you're gonna need help from other people. And when you ask people to help you, a lot of people are very generous and willing because they like making movies too and they want to get experiences. That's not to say it's not a lot of work and that it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's just like, if you're going to ask people to be helping you to make your movie come true, the very least you owe to them is to finish that movie and let it be something that they can see and that others can see.
Absolutely. I got a short film that you helped out on that is sitting in post. It is 28 seconds away from being done, and I think today marks 1 year since we rolled on principal photography.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate with that. Is I had a third short film that we shot at the we had to split it over 2 weekends, but it was the end of August and then the end of September of last year. And I mean, a year is fast approaching on that from when we shot it, but I'm only able to make my movies on the generosity of like my friends that collaborate with me, and it's always with the understanding that it's like, hey, they are lending me their talents, but it's when they have the availability to do it, and it's just, you know, yeah. I mean, I think that that movie of mine is called Bronze. Is like Bronze has been at like the 99% mark as far as like being finished for several months, but it's just like that last 1% always seems to take the longest because it's multiple people that, excuse me, that are helping complete it. So yeah, that is the thing though, when you make movies, is it's pretty crazy how quickly time goes by without you realizing it, that it's like, oh shoot, we shot this long ago and it's not done. And it's like, don't let that deter you either, being like, yeah, it's been this long, but you can still finish it.
All right, so we got some good tips on how to finish it. Uh, what would you tell someone for how to start?
How to start
Yeah.
making movies?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's as simple as like, well, nowadays, and a lot of people give this same recommendation. So I'll even start with the same, is like most of us have a pretty powerful camera in our pocket already.
Yes.
So there's really no excuse to not be able to start making something. Is just make a little short just with your phone and a couple of friends over the course of a day.
Yeah.
And there's there's free editing software out there.
For your phone. You can cut on your phone.
You could do it all on your phone. You don't even need to have a computer. You can do it all there, all one-stop shop with that. Is I would say, if you want to make movies, is like it's never been easier. You've never needed less in order to just make it. It's just I think that it's easy to find excuses of like, there's many excuses why not to make a movie, being like, oh, I need this, or I need we need to have these effects, or I need this many actors in this many locations. Oh, it's just like, you can talk about making movies in theoretical sense, or you can just go out and do it. And if you, at the bare minimum, you have your iPhone or whatever else smartphone wise you have, that it has a good camera on it and it can record sound, and like you said, you can edit on it as well. Is you're only going to get better as a filmmaker. No one is making a cinematic classic their first one out the gate, like if they've never made anything. So at least go out and get practice doing it, and just make little shorts, make a little 1-minute movie, try and make as compelling of a short film as you can in a minute's time, as far as the runtime, I mean.
Something I find compelling is going after questions and thoughts that really disturb you and kind of stick to your brain a little bit, and might be something that you're thinking about later in the day or when you're laying down in bed, but something that keeps on popping up. And something that you said about Locksmith feels like it fits right in there. Just that idea of how many strangers do you let into your home every day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that, with what you were saying about ideas or thoughts that you have that you like ponder, is like using that as, for motivations for the story that you have, is kind of obviously what I said already, but also the way that I like to approach it with doing short films, is that with the ideas that I'm coming up with, beyond what I already said about the accessibility of locations or what have you, is writing an idea that your audience already has a shorthand with. That
Yeah.
there's not enough time in a short film to truly relate to those characters and connect with them on a personal level. You don't have the time to actually care about them. But if you make a movie that has characters in a familiar situation, your audience already has a shorthand of being like, oh, I've done something like this before. And they can then put themselves in that place of understanding what that character is going through, even if they don't directly understand that character personally.
Sure, there's lots of great shorthand. An ambulance driver, we're probably going to associate with good guy who saves lives. Doctor, same thing. Nazi is a shorthand for a bad guy. astronaut is shorthand for somebody who's really brave. Not saying that you need to go make a short film about astronauts fighting Nazis or something, but there's a lot of shorthand in our everyday lives that will allow your audience to connect, like you said, or for you to subvert expectation.
Right. It's you're plopping the audience down in the middle of a situation happening between these characters, and you're helping them to understand where we're coming into this as quickly as possible. And like my approach, my first short film, Nightcap, is within the first minute of the film is you can get the understanding that these are two characters that are on a first date after meeting on a dating app, and they have come back to the guy's place after going out for drinks. So that I in my thought process was looking at it being like in the modern age is, you know, a lot of adults of a certain age demographic can immediately understand what that is. And that can be the shorthand to introduce you to being just like, oh, I've only been looking at and watching these characters interact for 45 seconds, but I already understand the circumstances of what this movie, what's happening in this movie thus far.
Cool, man. So to me, it sounds like make your movie, do it with your phone, cut it on your phone if you have to, shoot it on your phone if you must. Then when you're done, get it out there, submit it to festivals, put it on YouTube, make it as an Instagram reel or a TikTok or whatever it is where people watch things. You never know, you might have 60,000 eyeballs on your thing, which is like a stadium of people watching your stuff. And write something compelling where you can use shorthand to get the audience into it right away.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the biggest takeaway is just make a movie and see it all the way through. And your decision making with, if you have that mindset of being like, I'm going to make a movie, it's going to be finished, and I'm going to get whatever kind of audience I can for it by whatever means I choose to do, is that should make it, you know, affect your other decision making of what that movie is going to be, of being like, I know I'm going to make something that I can finish, so let me curtail my decision making in what the story is, where it takes place, etc., with that in mind, of being like, well, this is a really great idea, but I'm never going to be able to finish it for X, Y, Z reason. It's going to be too many shoot dates, too many characters. I mean, that was one other thing. It's just real quick, is like parameters that I always give for myself with where I'm at in making these, is writing it that beyond this thing, the locations, and that is writing something that can be between 2 to 3 characters tops in it, and something that you can film over 2 days and have everything that you need, because that's doable. That's a weekend. That's a Saturday and Sunday, and less variables. If you're only, especially if you're starting out as a filmmaker, focusing as a director on directing 2 people in a scene and getting that experience, rather than be like, hey, I've never made a movie before, and this is like this crazy dialogue scene between 8 characters with all these moving pieces and all this complicated blocking. And hey, before you know it, the entire day has gone by and you haven't even finished shooting the master shot of it. Now it's like, you don't have it's like that. Sure, you're going to learn lessons from doing that. And the biggest one's going to be like, hey, I'm not going to do that again. So until I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Shoot, like you said, shoot with what you have, start directing small. If you're in Nebraska, shoot 2 people who think they might see something in the corn. And if you're in the city, shoot 2 people who think they might hear something in the apartment above them.
Right. And this is an old adage, but also like, make a movie that you want to watch. Like, you want to see this movie. Like, you're like, oh, this is a cool idea. I want to see this movie, and that's why you're making it. I mean, making movies is a selfish pursuit, really. It's just like, if you're making it something that's a story that you think is worth being told, then like truly like believe in it and make something and be like, hey, I want to watch this movie, and that's why you're making it. You're making it for that. It's not just because you're like, oh, I think that this is in vogue right now and audiences would like that. It's like, hey, yeah, I get it. You want people to like watching your movie, but at the end of the day, you want to be able to watch your movie too and like that. I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there that just doesn't interest me personally as an audience member, so I wouldn't go out trying to make that kind of movie myself as a filmmaker.
Sure. Yeah, man. I get it. I got a short story that I'm rewriting the fight scene where it's a dude and a bunch of robots and guards, and that's not something that everybody wants to read, but I do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's where, and even just like stylistically with some filmmaking, I'm just like, hey, this is the kind of stuff I enjoy watching. These are the genres that I enjoy watching. So I'm not going to make some heavy, like, character drama because,
Yeah.
hey, like that just doesn't interest me as much as, you know, trying to scare people with a creepy locksmith, and make people feel uncomfortable. It's like that's the kind of stuff I like watching. So that's what I'm setting out to make myself.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Corey. And to everybody out there, when Locksmith is available for you to check out, I am sure we'll get it in your hands one way or another. If not, go support your local film festivals where it might be playing, especially if you're in LA or anywhere else that it might be showing. Corey, you want to leave with anything else?
Yeah, for anyone of Blake Armstrong's audience that is in the Los Angeles area, Saturday, June 22nd at 11:45 p.m. at the TCL Chinese Theaters. Locksmith will be playing as part of the Midnight series of short films. It's a block of 10 shorts, I believe, total, which will run you approximately 2 hours for the run of it. There's Q&A afterwards with the filmmakers. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So as of right now, I know there's some tickets still available, but they're anticipating a sellout. So
fantastic. All right, Corey. Well, looking forward to when we can talk again, maybe when Bronze comes out or before.
Sounds good. Thank you, Blake. This was a lot of fun.